In amplitude modulation, the task is to take a signal of some sort and mix the signal with a carrier signal and be able to transmit the signal through a channel of some sort, and also be able to demodulate the signal by recovering the original signal at the tail end of the demodulator. To begin, let's learn some of this terminology. First of all, this is the M of T, which is the modulated message signal. This is the signal that you're attempting to transmit. Could be a speech signal, could be a song, whatever. This C of T is carrier signal. It's usually modeled by a cosine. This is the amplitude of the cosine, and this is the frequency of the carrier. And finally, the output of this modulator is the modulated signal, as opposed to the modulating signal. The modulated signal is the output of the modulator. Imagine, for instance, that I'm operating a radio station. I could be speaking into the microphone or playing a song. My goal would be to transmit this into the listener. Let M of T be this signal, either my speech or a song. This could be the time domain representation of the signal, and if I take the Fourier transform of the signal, it'll most likely look like this, which is a baseband type of a signal, where most of the frequency components are closer to the origin and none at the high frequency levels. The radio station operates at a particular frequency. An oscillator produces a carrier current at the specified frequency. This is the Fourier transform of a cosine function. It's scaled by 1/2, and you get a delta function shifted to the right and into the left by f0. Therefore, the frequency domain representation of the cosine carrier will be two delta functions centered at fc and negative fc. Finally, at the output, phi of t. In the time domain, phi of t, or the modulated signal, will be the multiplication of the message signal and the carrier. However, multiplication in the time domain means convolution in the frequency domain. If we multiply in the time domain, we have to convolve in the frequency domain. So as can be seen here, big phi of f is equal to big M of f involved with the carrier. Performing a convolution with a delta function is like multiplying by 1. So as can be seen here, a copy of the message signal is in the here and here. We're getting a copy of the message signal where the delta functions were. Therefore, the time domain output of the modulator is this. Now, the output of the modulator, phi of t, is to be transmitted via some channel, most likely over the air in a radio station, but it could be in coaxial cable or any other medium. Again, the task is to demodulate the signal. The demodulator must operate at exactly the same frequency of the modulator. As can be seen here, the modulated signal is multiplied by another oscillator operating at the same frequency as the carrier frequency. When you multiply the modulated signal with another cosine, you're left with this term, where you have cosine squared. This is a trig identity for cosine squared. This is this stage right here. Using this trig identity, we're left with this expression. As can be seen, there are two components. The first component contains the message signal. It's being scaled by AC over 2. The second component contains the message signal. However, it's being multiplied by a cosine at 2 times the frequency. If we use a low-pass filter and center it at the origin, we can filter out this component. And we will be left with our message signal at some scale. We can simply adjust this amplification and recover our signal. Now, coherent demodulation requires relatively complex circuitry. It also requires exact synchronization between the two oscillators. Even small deviations in synchronization could corrupt or degrade the output. It is very likely that there will be only a single modulator and many demodulators. Well, given the complexity of the circuits and the requirement of synchronization, this could be very complex and expensive. In this modulation scheme, an entirely separate carrier term is added to the output. This can be seen here. This is the original output plus the separate carrier term, as can be seen here. And now the new amplitude can be factored out. This is the frequency domain representation. Now, in addition to synchronous demodulation, envelope detection could be used to demodulate the signal. This can be a lot more convenient and cheaper. Bandwidth is a very valuable and finite commodity. In QAM, 2 separate signals are transmitted on a single frequency band. This is the first message, and this is the second message. The carrier is produced by a single oscillator. This is a delay block. It produces a phase difference of pi over 2. The first message is being multiplied by cosine, while the second message is being multiplied by a sine. The demodulator is a mirror image of the modulator. The QAM signals enters the demodulator. It gets multiplied by a cosine and a sine. Let's call this stage x1 and this stage x2. Here, the demodulated signal is being multiplied by cosine. Using the appropriate trig identities, the first message was recovered. A low-pass filter is used to filter out the higher frequency components. A similar process is used for x2. And the low-pass filter will filter out the high frequency components. And the second message is recovered.
Tonight,